What's up? This is the second attempt at the CSS demo. The last video didn't have any sound, so today I'm just going to quickly run through some of the stuff that we covered yesterday. Right, so first thing we're going to cover is the favicons. Then we're going to go ahead and import some Google fonts, and we're going to implement some transitions, the box shadow, some gradients, and then we're going to end it with the animation, keyframe animation, and responsive design. Right, so the first thing we are going to do is add a favicon. So the favicons are these little icons. When we bookmark something, it'll show a little picture. So it's really easy to do. This is the line of code that you're going to have to write to import the favicon. So as you see over here, my images folder, I have the cat and a dog image. Right now it's set to the dog image. If I change it to cat and I save it, it'll show me the cat, right? So as long as you have the image in your local storage and it's a square, it should work fine. You generally want to keep it a square because if it's not, then it's going to get kind of distorted. But yeah, that's about it for the favicons. So next up, let's go ahead and look at some Google fonts. So Google has this really good resource, and they give you a ton of web fonts that you can freely import, and it will always work with Google Chrome at least. I'm pretty sure it should be all right for the other browsers, but just to be safe, you kind of want to have a backup font. But over here, I'm going to say this one. This one looks pretty cool, right? So I go to fonts.google.com, I look for the font that I want, I click on Add, and I click on the family selected, and this little pop-up will come up, and all you have to do to use that font is to copy this, go over to your HTML, on the head section of your HTML, you want to paste that in there, save that, and now if you go to your CSS, there's a second line here that you can copy and you can use it in your CSS. So I'm just going to say for everything in my DOM, I want to give you that font. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go over here in my body. I'm going to create an H1 tag, and I'm just going to say Google Fonts. H1, close that. So now if I go look at CSS demo, there we go, Google Fonts. Don't know why it took so long to load, but just so we can see a better picture of it, I'm going to say for the H1 tag, I want the font size to be 3EM. And what that means is just the 3 times what it was before. I'm going to give it margin top of 50 pixels, margin left 50 pixels. All right, so we save that, go over here, boom. The font is the crazy font that I just imported. Right? So the next thing we do, I'm going to show you guys how to do some transitions. Right? So first of all, let's go ahead and build a div. And I'm just going to give it a class. I'm going to call it, my div. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to close the div, and over here, we're going to give it some styling. All right, so let's go dot my div. I want to give you height and a width. Height is, say, 100 pixels. Width, let's give it 50 pixels width. Or I want to give you a height of 50. And I want to give you a width of 100. So it's kind of like a rectangle, right? We're going to give you background color, say red. So let's take a look. All right, so we got our box here. Maybe I want you to be, slightly bigger. And I want this box to always be in the center of my window, no matter what I do, right? So there's a few ways you can go about it. I like to use the position absolute property. So we're going to make you position absolute. And when I do position absolute, it's going to look for the div I'm applying this style to. It's going to look for the first parent element with either position absolute or position relative. And it's going to make that guy the anchor of all the top, left, bottom, and right styling that I applied to it. But in this case, if it doesn't find anything, it's just going to default to the window, to the body, right? So my div, I'm giving a position absolute. I'm going to say top, 0, left, 0, and these two styles are going to be applied relative to the window because I do not have another parent div or parent element that has position absolute. So I save that. Misspelled left. All right, so I've saved that. If I refresh the page, this red box should be in this corner right here. Let's do that. All right, it is. So I don't want it to be on the corner. I want to be in the middle, in the center all the time. So, I can actually do some calculations now, right? So I can say calc 50% of the width minus, that's 50% of the height minus half of the height, which is 40 pixels. And if I do that here, I can say 50% of the width minus 100 pixels, which is half of this guy's width. So now, if I refresh it, it'll be in the middle. And the cool thing about this is that no matter how I resize my window, it's always going to do the new calculation and position itself right in the middle. Right? Pretty cool. All right, so now let's get into the transitions. So let's say I want to give my div hover. So if I hover over my div, I want the background color to be blue. I also want the cursor to show me the hand, which is the pointer. Right? So let's take a look. If I refresh, hover over it, my cursor turned to the pointer, the box turned blue, right? But what if I want the red to slowly turn to blue? I don't want it to just all happen at one time. That's where the transitions come in. So I'm going to copy this piece of code for transitions, just so you guys can see better. I'll put it over here. Going to uncomment all of that. All right. So we have these 4 lines, and for transitions, you're going to always want to have at least 4 of these, because what it does is it accounts for different kind of browser support. This is the one that actually applies it for the Google Chrome. So the first thing here you want to specify is the attribute that I'm targeting, right? So in this case, I want the background color to transition. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change the background to background color. So it actually applies the style. I want it to transition in 5 seconds is fine. And let's say I also want the height to change. So I'm going to get rid of these guys. I'm going to say when I hover on it, the height is going to be, let's say, 200. So it's going to be a square, right? So over here we have our transition ease in and out. That is basically saying that it's going to go slowly and then quickly and then slowly again. You can have it linear, you can have it just ease in or just ease out. It's up to you. There's a bunch of other ones you can go look up, but that's where you put it. And then the last one is going to be, the how many seconds it takes when you release it. All right, so refresh here. So yeah, look at that. It's turning blue 5 seconds. Cool. Right, so that's how you do transitions. Generally, you don't want it to be, that long. So we can do maybe 0.5 seconds. All right. Boom. When I hover over it, it's going to transition. Cool. So that's how you do transitions. Pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at the next thing. Okay, box shadow. Let's say we want to, when we hover over it, we want to give it a box shadow. Basically, it's like the thing it creates in the background some kind of, gradient shadow effect. So let's go ahead and do that. If I hover over it, it's very faint, but you should be able to see it. Let's make this 19 instead of -19. And also let's make this 0.75 opacity. So if you refresh the page, boom, you see the box shadow there. Now the box shadow is pretty useful if you have something that's hovering above, like say a header bar or something. So when you scroll, it has like a faint, box shadow effect, so it looks like it's on top of all the other elements. Cool, so that's how you do box shadows. Gradients. This is a good one. So if you want the background color to not be just a solid color, but you want it to kind of have like a gradient color, then this is the code you're going to use. Again, we have 4 of them to account for different browser support, right? And over here, instead of background color blue, I'm just going to change it to background. Over here as well, I'm going to change these guys. And I'm going to get rid of this one altogether because I want the background to be the gradient background, right? And it's going to have a transition effect of 0.5 seconds. So let's go ahead and refresh our page. Boom. Gradient. Cool. Right. So, all right, let's get into the animation portion of it, right? So for animations, there's 2 parts you want to do. The first part is declaring the animation. The second part is, defining the animation. What is it going to animate, right? So let's put this piece of code in our hover effect. So when I hover over that thing, I want it to animate. I want it to give it this animation styling, right? Oops. So very similar to transitions, right? Animation, you're defining the name of the animation function that you're going to call. Well, it's not really a function, but it's defining the name of the animation that defines what the animation is. In this case, it's ANI. That's the name of it. The second thing is how many seconds you want it to animate, what the curve is going to be, how many times you're doing it, and also the last thing is the forwards will have the animation stay after it's done animating. Otherwise, it'll just revert back to the original, whatever it was before. So we defined our animation here with name ANI. So now we have to actually write a keyframe animation with that same name. So let me go ahead and put this up there. And this is corresponding to this. So when I do this animation, it's going here. It's going to look at the keyframes over here, and it's gonna. You can define at 0%. I want some kind of styling. At 50%, I can want some styling. 100%. These percentages you can have like 100 of them, but the idea is you can define at what percentage of the animation to apply what kind of styling. So let's take a look. At 0%, we want our width and height. Let's say I want the height to be, say I want height to be 100, and I want the width to be 100. Get rid of this guy, and at 100%, I want the width to be 100%. So it's going to span the entire window. And the height, I'm going to make the height, I'm going to make it, let's say 300 pixels. All right, so we can see that it actually did change. So when I hover over my div, it's going to do the transition, it's going to do the linear, the gradient, it's going to give it a box shadow, but it's also going to apply this animation CSS styling to it, which will trigger this guy. And it'll go from what I defined at %0 to %100. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so boom, it's going to animate. And you can define, many kind of constraints for these animations. It's really up to you what you can do. You can rotate it. You can, center it correctly again. I'm not going to get into that, but the idea is if you use the keyframe animations, as soon as this animation styling is applied, it'll do the animation. So generally speaking, you would want some kind of animation, maybe to trigger if somebody clicks something. If somebody clicks something, you can add a class to it using jQuery or Angular. And in that class, if you have this animation trigger, then the animation will happen. So that's how you control, when it actually happens. So let's take a look at, animation delay. I don't want to miss this part. So for animations, if you have many animations happening sequentially, then you can assign this animation trigger at the same time, apply the class at the same time. But if you give it a WebKit animation delay, it's going to delay that animation by that amount of seconds, right? So let's go ahead and, just for the sake of demonstration here, I'm going to delay this by 2 seconds, right? So if I refresh the page, if I hover over this box, it's going to wait 2 seconds and then it's going to animate. So 1, 2, animate. All right. So you can play around with animation delays if you have like a bunch of animations that you want to happen, but you want to time it out so it kind of happens sequentially. You can apply the animation classes to them at the same time with different WebKit animation delays, and that will let things animate in sequence. All right? Cool. So I think we have one more thing to cover, is just the responsive stuff. The responsive stuff is really, it's pretty simple. The only thing you really need to remember is at media screen and you can define a max width. You can define a min width as well. Max width just means that, hey, if the window falls, if the screen falls below 400 pixels, then apply the styling to it. If you have a min, then it's just the opposite. If it's not that big, then apply the styling to it. So in this case, if we want to design something for responsive design, say for like a mobile device, this would be exactly what you would want to write in your CSS. So this would say if the screen is below 400 pixels, apply this styling, right? So I'm just going to, for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to say body, background color, I'm going to make it black. Right? So as soon as the screen falls below 400 pixels wide, max width, you can also define a max height as well. It's pretty flexible. As soon as this condition is met, this styling will be applied to your DOM. So just keep in mind that if you have other conflicting properties given to the same class or the same ID, these will overlap and sometimes it might not work. So if it doesn't work, then you probably have something that's overlapping, and that's a good thing to try to look over, right? So all right, let's try it out. So over here, if I set the window to less than 400, the background color is going to change. See that? So now you can kind of define exactly how many pixels you want to set as that that trigger, right? Mostly, generally speaking, if it's less than 400, then it's probably going to be on a mobile device. So that's a good gauge. You can also set like many of these. You can say, hey, if it's less than 400, do this kind of styling. If it's less than 500, then do another kind. Less than 600, do another kind. So you can have like different levels to the responsiveness, and that's really up to you. how much time you want to spend doing that. But yeah, so pretty much that is it. I hope this this little demo here helped you. And if you guys look at the description in YouTube, it should have a link for GitHub, and you can find this code there. So that's it. Thanks for watching.